Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this very special conversation between the four filmmakers. So, all four filmmakers, we're really pleased to have you all here, featured in the program titled Memory Imaging Explorations of the Personal and Collective, guest programmed by Xavier Lang. So, my name is Lyra Kang, and I'm a programmer here at the Los Angeles Film Forum. And before we jump into the conversation, I just wanted to share a little bit about Filmforum and also a little bit about this program. So for those who may not be familiar, Los Angeles Film Forum, we were founded in 1975 and is the longest running organization in Southern California dedicated to the non-commercial exhibition of independent and experimental film and media art. If you'd like to know more about our programs, or if you're interested in becoming a member, or in joining our mailing list, you can visit us at lafilmforum.org. So just to give a little context for this program. So earlier this year, Film Forum had put out an open call for guest programmers to submit proposals to programs that we would present virtually. And we did this, as a way to give folks an opportunity to connect and to showcase some ideas during this very challenging time of the pandemic, where a lot of creative opportunities have been lost, especially folks working in the arts and film and media. So we wanted to create an opportunity for folks to share their ideas with us and also to identify emerging programmers in the LA area and also beyond. So we're really thrilled. We were all really thrilled by Xavier's proposal for this program. And we are really happy to feature it also as the first program that we are presenting this year as a part of the open call. So some upcoming shows to look out for on our calendar. So as also a part of our open call, so the guest program will be called Comfort Behavior, and that's been guest programmed by Sam Gurry and Jordan Wong, which will be happening July 22nd to the 25th. We'll also be having a program of works by the Berlin-based artist Suzanne Berner, and also some new works by Pat O'Neill and Martha Colburn. So those are some things to look out for. And just also for those who are tuning in from wherever you are, feel free to put in any questions or comments into the chat. So whether you're joining via Zoom or you're also joining through the Ventive streaming platform, you can submit questions and comments there as well. So I'll be managing some of that. And Xavier will also be able to look at that and sort of address some of those questions. So I'm going to go ahead now and pass the mic to Xavier Lang, who's our guest programmer today, to introduce the four artists that are going to be in conversation today. So I'm going to zoom off, or I'll just be hiding my camera, but I'll be here and I'm excited to listen in on the conversation.
All right. Okay. Well, hello, I'm Xavier, the guest programmer. And I just want to say before we start, I'm in Chicago right now, and my power's been going out like nonstop for the past 15 minutes. So if I cut out, that is what's going on. But I'm on my phone right now, so hopefully that does not happen. But anyways, I'd just like to say thank you to LA Film Forum and Leroy for this opportunity. It's been really great through this process, and I've been really happy with how it turned out. And I'm very excited to have this conversation with all the filmmakers that are here today. So I figured we could just start with Miko Revereza's film Distancing, which is the first film in the program. And first off, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. It's nice to have you on. And I also know we were just talking about how you and a couple of the other filmmakers know each other. So it's really great that we can have this conversation. Everyone can kind of jump in as they'd like with their own questions or statements. So I'll start at the beginning of the film. It opens with that intimate conversation about your decision to leave the US. And I was just wondering, when did you just decide to, at what point did you decide to record this conversation? And did you have the film in mind when you recorded it?
That's a good question. I think I'm kind of always ready to film for the most part, or maybe at least throughout the process of making this film, or at least I have some sort of recording device on me, and then I visit I would visit my grandparents regularly in LA. They live in Glendale. And then and I go there, have conversations with them, and I film them sometimes and record our conversations. So this is just kind of like a part of the normal for us. And then part of it has gone to my other film, No Data Plan, and part of it is reserved for another film in the future. But this particular conversation, it was kind of like at a decision, a huge decision of my life to leave LA and the US. So it was kind of just figuring out the logistics of that and telling my grandmother this decision and kind of like planning with her, like the tickets and all of that. Like mine's one day, yours is a round trip, and then kind of, you guys saw it.
Right. Yeah. And that realization is like really nice to see it happen naturally. I was wondering, like, how, if you knew, I don't know, if you knew what you're doing or what came behind it.
No, I mean, maybe you can hear it in my voice a little bit, like a little bit of frustration. Like, come on, can you understand? Like, put it up on the internet. Like, this is this is a thing, Like, you can. She was asking me if you can have a one-way ticket. Like, is that possible? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, of course, that's what I'm gonna get. It's half the price, but I'm not coming back.
Yeah. Well, I guess that goes into the second question I have for you. I think the way we can do this, I guess I'll start with your film, and then we can go to Simon's film, Simon Liu's film, and then Suneil Sanzgiri's film, and end with Lei Lei's A Bright Summer Diary. And through that process, if any of the other filmmakers or anyone has questions or statements, please jump in. So the second thing I want to talk to you about is the section where you're playing snippets of you ripping films on, what was the software again that you're using? Because it looked very familiar.
I know. I don't have it right now because
whatever that is.
My laptop now doesn't have a CD drive. What is it?
Was it Toast?
Yeah. Math the
Okay.
River.
It's Math the River. I remember from the movie.
Yeah, so you're using that to rip a couple different films, and I was really interested to see what you chose. And I was wondering if you could talk about how you landed on the pieces you did. And I mean, the Jonas Mekas one was pretty obvious, but like, were there any you were thinking about that you left out, or were there moments that you wish you could have included, or just talk about that a little bit?
So I was doing my MFA at Bard, and then shout out to Keith Sanborn because he put me on to Math the Ripper. But also, like, they had a ton of DVDs there, so then it became like a part of my summer where I would just borrow the DVDs and rip them. And then I was also writing my thesis at the time of making this film, and I was writing about sort of this idea of stateless cinema. And I would reference a lot of movies that didn't like necessarily have like although it doesn't have like a subject or like a plot about statelessness or anything, had some relation to like a non-space or some sort of like long distance relationship or some sort of like where I don't know, they're like a train or like an airport scene or something. So I wrote about a lot of films like that, and I kind of did a lot of research. And this was kind of my process of just ripping material to watch. So yeah, I don't know, like, like Jonas Mekas and Chantal Ackerman are obvious picks. The like Godard Alphaville as they're like leaving Alphaville. I would also extend this to, I don't know, I wanted to include like the last season of Friends when like there's like this airport scene or something, and just kind of expanded
Oh
on.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I kind of just narrowed it down to these ones. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. No, I really enjoyed that scream because it is kind of a familiar like action if you are like ripping Blu-rays or something. I did like the same thing where when I was in school, like there are like movies I couldn't buy that they had in the library. And I was like, oh, I gotta go rip this. Like, I gotta do it. So it was nice to see that like very familiar
Yeah, gotta take
image
advantage
there.
of that tuition.
Yeah. I guess the next question I have is, can you talk a bit about your time since this film and like the decisions in this film and I guess how you can reflect on that and how things have been going?
Yeah. No, I think I remember like the feeling after making this film, and it kind of like I visited LAX as if sort of like prefacing the departure, as if like I'm going to leave there, which I did. I did leave from LAX, but then I remember this sort of feeling that I felt at the end of or putting together this film, especially like the last scene of just kind of like my flip-flops, my slides, and then like just running and stuff, and then just this music and this sort of I don't know, this kind of like liberating feeling or just kind of like lifting off or something. I remember that was like a strong emotion for me in that film. Like I never kind of like captured that type of feeling before of like I'm leaving this situation. Yeah, since then I think like, you know, this idea of leaving my situation there in the States, of being undocumented and stuck there for so long, and then revisiting like a homeland, the Philippines. I did go to the Philippines for a while, and then I ended up in Mexico. And then, you know, my stuff is still in the Philippines, so I'll be back there. I did enjoy the freedom of traveling for a bit until like COVID happened, but look forward to it again. I don't know. Yeah, I do like miss LA a bunch, and I feel like that's part of the kind of new maybe discourse in my work, or like what I'm processing of just being now out of that context and then reconfiguring it. It isn't from that film. It was kind of this point of departure that felt sort of uplifting, but then like coming back to a place or where I'm originally from, there's more complicated layers to it. So then I don't know, through future work, kind of processing that.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was going to ask like how, if that's been like a big thing you've been working on going forward, because I know you said some of those conversations are reserved. Some of those conversations with your grandparents are reserved for something you're working on now. So obviously you're still going through that. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, thanks.
But,
I mean, yeah, I'm editing another. I made a film here in Mexico with my partner Carolina called El Lado Quieto, which is kind of like a science fiction film. And then
nice.
but I've also been working on this sort of continuation of this series of films, this distancing included, like, and I don't know, it's just an ongoing project, and I have a lot of footage from LA and different travels, so working through that.
Yeah, and the footage you shot at LAX, was that something you did, like you had like something you'd recorded over the years, or was that something intentional for this?
I shot it for that. It was like an impulse, and then a previous film, Droga, that I made, it was like I don't know. I just kind of like when I first immigrated to the U.S., it was through LAX, and then I didn't realize why I would keep like gravitating towards LAX so much to shoot my films, and then And then by the time I made distancing, I was like, oh yeah, because that's where I passed through.
Important spot, yeah. Was that the one you were in, like the parking lot, planes were going overhead?
Yeah.
Was that Droga? Yeah.
There's this, I used it, like, this is like the third time I used it. It's just a, I don't know, recycled trope that I'm using.
Yeah.
The in and out across the street is great, and I like to get a nice view of the planes flying overhead.
Yeah.
When I'm out of ideas, I would just go there.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you. I think I'm going to move on to Simon now. But yeah, please jump in if you have anything to say. So Simon, your work, e-ticket, was very was very visual, and the subject matter was interesting. That you used your early photos, and I was wondering why. Like, why did you return to your early photos? Is this something you had in mind when you were doing this, when you were starting this project, or?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm like a notoriously pretty disorganized person. So my earliest experiences in image making, I was seeing a lot of like 35mm photographs, and I was like 17, 18, 19. And I thought I had all these negatives in a shoebox. And I thought I had lost this shoebox, actually.
Wow.
I had no idea where it was. So I stumbled across, like, in the studio one day, I stumbled across it, and I was like, oh shit, here it is. Like, this thing that I thought was gone forever. So I thought it was gone. So I might as well like do something with it. I might as well destroy these things, considering that I thought they didn't exist anymore, you know?
Yeah, they were already gone. Yeah,
they were already gone. So essentially, I started. So the film has like 13,000 35mm splices in it. So, and like kind of, I took these still negatives and spliced them together in rhythmic patterns, like literally 1 inch at a time. It was at a really weird time in my life. Like, my grandfather had Lewy body dementia. A lot of things had shifted around in my life, and I was like in a place where I wasn't really static in one place for a long time. So I knew I wanted to do something very repetitive, where I would just sit in one place and just like be with myself, you know, like, like spend time with myself after like so much had kind of shifted in my life. So I would actually like splice these negatives together, like literally like 1 inch at a time. So I would spend like 6 hours in the studio and come up with like a 15 foot long strip of film, like, you know, literally like weaving that thing together.
Yes,
and it felt substantial because it went across the room. But 15 feet of 35mm film is actually like 10 seconds of screen time. So it kind of went back to this idea of like having a very labor-intensive, meticulous process for something that like blows by on screen. To put all this effort into something that like you see, like the effort you can see, but it's so like, it's almost like you're being very unsentimental with something that you should have a very sentimental value to, or that like you're very willing to throw away the effort that you put into something. And for me, that has like relationships to the idea of like film production, or the relationship to do with how you construct something, you know, and everything that goes into something, and memories and things. Yeah. So I think I knew, I'd always imagined what it would be like to kind of like splice together a bunch of 35mm stills and just run them through a projector. And so, yeah, this was just like an opportunity to really do that and to really project what might happen, because I don't have like a 35mm projector. So in a lot of ways, you know, I depended on getting like a cheap photo scanner. So I actually, on top of splicing it like 1 inch at a time, I actually scanned it 1 frame at a time as JPEGs, and then put it together. Wow. So that's combined with like so there's like 4K scans that were done professionally, and then my like sketchy scans. So I can kind of use this photo scanner as well as like an optical printer as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think the origins of the idea was to, you know, I'm talking about this like very meticulous, handmade, like analog process, but hopefully getting at some kind of idea of using that material that is grounded, that is like, and associated with nostalgia or antiquity. You know, that's what film is in so many ways. But to be like really rough with it, unsentimental with it, and to try and get at some idea of the way that we view multiple planes of images, or multiple planes of like seeing life, you know, through this analog means in a way. Yeah. It's Dante's Inferno for the streaming age. That's like my tagline for it. Yeah.
No, I actually it's interesting you say that, because I was like, for the social media posts for this program, I was looking through the film and taking stills and doing a lot of pausing, and like through that process and like pausing and slowing it down, like all of the personal aspect of it started to like come out, which was very interesting. Like how, like I started to notice like some trips you went on, or like some friends you had and stuff like that. And I was like, I literally never saw this when I was watching it in real time. So like you saying, yeah, you were trying to strip the sentimentality from it. Like, yeah, it really worked. And it was interesting though to see like how far you can take that and how much was lost, because it's all still there. And that, I mean, I feel like there's worth in that to know, like those are the building blocks of the project, which is interesting. Yeah.
Can I chime in really quick?
Yeah,
also,
of course.
I watched Simon's film with really bad internet, and it was also, I had a similar experience with.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so then it would be kind of like intermittently just freeze on the frame, and I get to see like the frame for a long time. I do this with photo books sometimes, just on YouTube, just like flip throughs, and then like I like it because it just freezes on like a still that I want to see. But yeah, I had like the slow experience of experiencing your film, and I got to kind of observe like, oh yeah, like what is that? What is this image? And so yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I really love that. And I love like, yeah, there's frames that I kind of forget about, you know? And like kind of the joke I make too is that like, yeah, they might all be like ruined and scrambled around, but at least they're all in like one place. Like they're in one reel that's in my closet now, you know? And so, yeah, there is. And I think there is something interesting that like, you know, because there are like from 35 millimeter stills, there's a certain level in which there's like a real like a resolution to it. You know, because it's not like from a moving image, it's from like a fast shutter or something. So there's a way in which like there's the level of detail combined with the fluidity and the rapidity where there's like an image recognition level, you know. And I often think about this idea of like we're able to like process images and process symbols and relationships to different things so immediately because of like the media environment that we live in now. So like in this way, it's like, how do we exercise these newfound abilities that we have? If we're able to see so quickly, how do we like, you know, how do we exercise those abilities in order to like find something that isn't vapid or vacant within this newfound abilities that we have to see things so quickly? So this is my gesture towards maybe that idea or something like that in a way too. Yeah.
Yeah. Just taking it and going full blown with it, for sure. Yeah. And I do notice, like, I think a couple things did come through though as well. Like, even though it was pretty fast and stripped down, like very rapid, but I think the 2005 World Trade Organization Summit in Hong Kong, that definitely came through. And I'm wondering, because there's not much, I mean, it's clear that there's significance to it. And I'm wondering if there was, I'm saying in terms of it took a chunk of time in the film. So in that sense, like, to me as a viewer, I'm like, oh wow, what's all this about? What was the reason for you including that? Was it just included in the box, or?
Well, that was though they were in the box, yeah. But also that had a big impact on me. I mean, in an obvious way, you know, there was that was one of the first like mass protests I was ever witness to, and there was some kind of relationship to like what was to transpire in the decade following. But in another way, you know, the World Trade Organization was developed in the early 2000s, right? And they basically it basically made world trade easier, right? It was able, so like China became like a more global economic power because of a result of this. Like, and there's basically taking like the majority of the protesters that were there were actually Korean farmers because the new World Trade Organization policies made it so their like orange prices were like out of competition now essentially. So a lot of like farmers from the East Asia region went to World. I think George Bush was actually there, or like, you know, one of his hacks. You know what I mean? Right. So you know, a bunch of world leaders were there for this summit, and you know, there is this relationship, I think, between, I was talking about this idea of the labor loss between the frames, and this idea how that relates to film production, but also how that relates to trade, to the way in which labor is devalued based on labor is valued based on productivity, essentially, and and there's also there's scenes from India, there's scenes from these different places, and a kind of a collapse of time and space as well, and kind of the way that time and space is collapsed has a relationship to a seemingness of ease between jumping between these two different things. Like, thinking about the way that we can communicate over the cloud, but the cloud is like a warehouse full of friggin' hard drives that are taking up a ton of power, So there's things that happen very fluidly and automatically don't have a physical backing to them, basically. So yeah, there's this kind of connection between this idea of image production and world trade and consumption that I was already thinking a lot about. And I don't know, when I found the box and these World Trade Organization pictures were there, it was really struck me, that there was a lot of these relationships going on. It was
already, you're saying you were already thinking about these things at the time, and this just happened to come into your path, and you're like, oh wow.
Because a lot of my practice, I think, until that point, had to do with using abstraction, using multiple projection, using lots of layers of different images and converging energies and occurrences in order to try and encapsulate an idea of what Hong Kong, as I've known it to be all my life, is. And so it was kind of condensing all this information into a single frame to kind of get at these undercurrents of my past or understanding of a place. E-ticket came along at a time where things had changed, and I kind of wanted to obliterate that sense. It wasn't for a nostalgic purpose. It wasn't for a purpose of trying to hold on to things. It was more a way of relinquishing a former sense of self or something. I've already felt some form of purging. I felt there was something that felt different in my approach that was from the previous work that felt more angry in a way. And
I think that definitely comes through, because it's very it's purely visual, it's rapid, and it takes your foot on the gas the whole time. So from the beginning to the end.
In terms of the gas, I mean, I was also, it's not kind of cheese, but I was thinking a lot of Muybridge, the idea of fluid, what denotes fluidity in cinema, what denotes this idea of fluid motion in cinema. And so kind of using that interpretation, the horse, the profile view, for the first moving image or whatever they call it. How there's that relationship between that and two frames that compare to one another. And kind of the film culminates in that donkey ride, right? There's a horse-drawn carriage. So it's this idea of we've gone all this way, and I don't think we've figured out that much. I think we figured out a lot, but I don't think the populace's idea of what moving images can do has really progressed that much. So we might as well start back from 1910 and go from there, basically. we
just started over,
things, but it's this idea of commercials are so fast you don't see them, so it's every technique has been exploited by capitalist structure. So where do we go from here?
Who knows? But actually, you talking about multiple projection takes me to the next question I have. I was reading about a 7-channel screening of this film that you did. It was a you were at a residency, and
they had a 7-channel wall array thing. It was good. I'm kind of motivated to try, and because there was a way in which the project the screens were aligned left and right and up and down. It worked really well with the nature of the piece. So there's something in the works that will be a a dirty sequel to E-Ticket. E-Ticket 2. It's called Single File.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. E-Ticket 2.
Oh nice. Okay. E-Ticket 2. I was wondering though, is this like, is multi-channel? Because I know you've said that's something you've done in the past. That's something you enjoy to do, is to screen multi-channel works. Is this something that you had like envisioned in that way, or
for this, or for other things too?
Yeah, for this project specifically, or not really.
I had an idea of doing a multi-channel version, not of this piece, but of the same. There's like a part in the middle. I think it's exactly in the middle actually, and like everything's intersecting, and it's like it feels kind of humble and uplifting for a minute. That was like it's just like some part, and it's kind of different than the rest of it. And I was like, oh shit, you could make a whole film out of this little technique that I'm doing here, you know? So it's like I'm gonna take that one bit and elongate it, or find other means within it. Yeah. But yeah, I just finished a new video installation that's a 6-channel piece. So
wow, nice.
Yeah.
Well, great. All right. Well, I think I'm gonna move on to Sunil next. Are you here and available, Sunil?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you fine. So yeah, again, thanks for joining in. Sunil is joining live from Manhattan, the streets of Manhattan. I guess I'll start with the letter itself. And your distant relative. When did you like learn of your distant relative? Is this someone you had known about for a while, or when did you learn about him, and what role did he play in the formation of this?
Yeah, I had. I was aware of. So I have a very close relative that's also named Prabhakar Sanzgiri, but it's not the same Prabhakar Sanzgiri. I had found out about this particular Prabhakar Sanzgiri, who is a distant relative. Sorry, I'm outside. There's some buses passing. But you know, I had read about him online, and was just interested in his biography, like probably in maybe 2017 or something like that. I kind of like stumbled upon his name, and I was like, wait, is this the same Prabhakar Sanzgiri that I grew up with, who also passed away around the same time? I was like, oh, this is similar. And I asked my
weird, yeah.
He's like, no, that's not the same one. Prabhakar is a very common Indian name. Sanzgiri, however, not that common. We're all related to each other, you know, like all the Sanzgiris come from Goa. And so, you know, I knew I was related to the Prabhakar Sanzgiri. It wasn't until I had actually, I was sitting in this Harun Farokhi film, it was like one of his fiction films, not my favorite, but I somehow just had this like kind of epiphany that I knew even before filming and going to India and visiting my relatives and going to Delhi. Before even filming, I knew I wanted to write a letter, and I knew I wanted to write it to Prabhakar because I had been doing a lot of reading about his relationship to all of these major events throughout the 20th century in India, including the liberation of Goa, where our family's from, but also through, Indira Gandhi's emergency in the 1980s, where he was imprisoned, and then and even in 1987 during independence. So he had kind of like channeled all these different, major events of the 20th century. Interestingly enough, and so he's kind of like, as someone who self-identifies as a leftist, whatever that means, someone who's very interested in kind of revolutionary histories and their successes and failures. I would have to these, or someone who comes from my ancestral family, who has these relationships to prisoners' rights and being a freedom fighter and really just fighting for workers in India. And he wrote biographies of Ambedkar, so very aware of caste privilege and probably would be considered an anti-caste or anti-Brahminical supremacist now. And funnily enough, I after, or at least, you know, through the making of this film and after its kind of reception within the film community, I had a distant cousin of mine named Suneil Sanzgiri, who reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm Prabhakar's grandson. And, you know, he lives in LA. He lives in LA, actually.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so, but he's a photographer and was just like, you Sanzgiri wants to write about this new relationship we have with each other, and he wants to write about it and kind of produce his own work inspired by, you know, and compare notes kind of between our relationship. And we're even talking about, you know, trying to get translations, because Prabhakar Sanzgiri and his wife Suman Sanzgiri, who are both Communist Party leaders in Maharashtra, which is a complicated in its own right. I mean, the Communist Party is not, you know, they have their own shortcomings, but definitely a fierce fighter. But he so many books, and so we're talking about Shona, my cousin, and his father are interested in translating some of their father and father's writing, Prabhakar Sanzgiri's writing, into English. And I'm like, you know, I might be able to try and do some independent publishing here in the U.S. Some of his writing circulated independently. You know, that's down the line, but I'm, you know, that's all to say that this film has really, you know, exactly what I thought and hoped that it would, which is a deeper connection with my family and with lineage, ancestry, and other like-minded, you know, people in the revolutionary tradition. You know, not everyone's family, especially in India, has the kind of progressive tendency here in the U.S. too. You know, I mean, everywhere. You don't know what you're going to family. You don't know what their politics are going to be, and you might have discussions about it. I feel lucky that I've been able to find some relatives that share this sense of history, this kind of like revolutionary past that I think is important for understanding the present as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say it's like that was what you were looking for, is that looking for a connection with familiar history and ancestral history, and you're doing a very literal thing by writing a letter to Prabhakar, and then you get a literal outcome of his grandson reaching out to you, which is, you know, obviously more than what you're trying to get out of it to start. But that's great to hear. Now, you also mentioned that you had this letter in mind when you went to India and visited family and went to Delhi. And when you were there shooting expired film, I know you mentioned the film expired 2002. Is that correct? Was that significant at the time when you were shooting, or did you just
repeat the question again? The internet went out for a second. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. I was just talking about are you still there, Sunil? All right.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry about that.
No, you're totally good. I can hear you. Yeah, I was asking about when you went. I know a lot of the images are shot by you on expired film, and I'm wondering if there was significance at the time. in you recording this? Because I know you
Yeah,
discussed that the film was expired in 2002. I don't know if you purposely is it 2002 when the film
it
expired?
is 2002. Yeah, it's interesting because you know, I don't know how much anyone cares about this, but also, I mean, you know, in terms of like, it's interesting. I don't really, not many of the reviews kind of like or Q&As, people are picking up on that, and it's like the first line that I have in the, like, you know, what I write about it. But
yeah, on your website.
Yeah, and like just kind of like the blurbs, you know, you write for yourself of your own work and send around.
Sure.
And people write about your film. But 2002 was very significant. 2002 was the anti-Muslim, essentially state-sponsored genocide of Muslim populations in Gujarat, where at the time in 2002, Narendra Modi, who is now the prime minister and the leader of the BJP, of the ruling party, he was governor in Gujarat and essentially oversaw the kind of state-sponsored program that you know, killed thousands of Muslims, and that genocide in 2002 directly led to what, you know, when in 2020, a week before I landed in Delhi, you know, another entire Muslim neighborhood had been burned to the ground. And,
Wow.
you know, these are like supposedly like communalist riots, like Hindus die in these riots too, but by and large, these are by the hands of Hindus. So, yeah. So anyway, so it's like 2002.
And that brings to mind Kashmir as well, in terms of
yeah,
Modi,
absolutely,
him
absolutely.
annexing.
Yeah, so, but to go back to 2002, so the expired film is funny because, I mean, you know, Simon works at this place called Negative Land, or work at, Simon, do you actually still work at Negative Land, or are you pop in and out sometimes?
I just bum around and make work there sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, Ross McFessel, shout out Ross, he had just kind of posted like, hey, we have a bunch of like expired film stock, come and get it. And it was just the cheapest stock that like I could get.
Yeah.
And then so I just bought all of it. And I remember just being like, I wonder like what the like if I could find the expiration date on this, and like what if that would like reveal any significance to me. And so I just looked on the back of the canisters, and it says like, you know, used before 2002 or best before 2002, right? And of course, it doesn't mean that like you can't use it. It just means that, you know, that's like, it's like the, you know, best before. But this idea of like something expiring, or this idea of something, you know, having like an end date, I think is significant in thinking of like how, you know, the kind of like seepages of history, the way in which history spills out, you know, across its confined dates, and, you know, the ways in which these things have afterlives. And so using this film stock that supposedly expired at a certain time, I gave it an afterlife, sort of subverting the idea of like what happens when in 2002 these riots then lead to the same type of riots, these anti-Muslim state-sponsored killings of just, you know, completely innocent neighborhoods, shopkeepers, you know, people who are just like trying to live their life, and it's essentially ethnic cleansing. Same how it is in Kashmir. So this film, you know, takes a number of it goes through a number of these issues, and I have to say, like, some people, you know, have come to me and been like, you know, I think you're collapsing a lot of these political issues, these very important issues, you know, onto each other. And I think it's important to state from my perspective, you know, like, this is not like a documentary on any of these things, you know, like, this is not like, you know, me trying to have some authoritative explanation or kind of like journalistic reportage of any of these events. I connect these issues the way in which they are presented to me, essentially, the way in which I connect them.
Yeah.
And a lot of this happened when I visited the Shaheen Bagh neighborhood in Delhi, right? And this is the neighborhood that was responsible for these protests that swept the nation in 2019 and continued into 2020 and ended with the lockdown, essentially, the first lockdown. And, when I had visited these locations, it was an all-Muslim-led movement against the CAA bills, which is the Citizenship Amendment Act, effectively barring Muslims from becoming citizens in India. So, these protests, we would see people talking about and hear from people who were talking about the interconnectedness of the Kashmiri struggle for liberation, Azadi, as well as the liberation of Dalits and the liberation of women and the liberation of, Adivasis, the scheduled tribes, and so the indigenous scheduled tribes. And so, at these particular sites of revolt and resistance were the interconnectedness of all these disparate issues. What I'm then adding on to that is my own sense of research and my own sense of belonging, which is with, my this Prabhakar Sanzgiri, who then, wrote about Ambedkar, and Ambedkar was is the anti-caste figure. He is the revered icon. And so it's been a lot of the imagery that's of Ambedkar. I'm just like going off right now. Sorry, you probably have another question, and we can move to Lei Lei as well. But
no, please keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ambedkar, there's these images of him in a museum as this like animatronic.
Yeah, he looks like a wax figure. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, he's an animatronic wax figure, and so to me, this isn't necessarily me like appropriating his image, right? Like I try and be upfront about my caste privilege. I'm an upper caste Brahmin. My family are Brahmins, and so that upper caste privilege. To kind of appropriate that image of Ambedkar is problematic in some ways. But what I'm trying to call attention to is not. And I should say even specifically, there was a news story recently where a Dalit person was murdered for having an image of a poster of Ambedkar that they put up on their wall. And this person was just murdered because they had an image of this radical figure who wrote the Indian Constitution. So, it's real different than me. It's real different than me, like just using Ambedkar's image. What's happening is I'm actually going through. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Totally fine.
And the wax museum figure was in a memorial dedicated to Ambedkar that was started by the BJP. The ruling party. So Modi's party created this museum dedicated to Ambedkar. It's a beautiful museum. It's a gorgeous, space. The architecture is fascinating. It's actually, the actual building is shaped like the Constitution. And the BJP is ripping apart the Constitution.
Is that there's an image of it? Is there an image of it in your film?
It's a model. Looking? Yeah, it's a model. Yeah, inside the museum. So and there's a line in the film, and it says like, the line in the card. It says Ambedkar, the radical anti-caste figure, abolitionist, the figure we see on every banner. Like his image is everywhere. He's at every, his image is at every protest. And then, the next line says plasticity, who gets to mold his figure? So this is me kind of questioning, quite literally, whose hands touched the plastic that built the wax museum figure,
Yeah.
And so who gets to tell these stories? Who gets to co-opt that imagery? And the BJP has tried many times to co-opt Ambedkar as this like Hindutva figure, which is absolutely ridiculous. But everyone knows that that's just so wrong and hilarious. And so I think they've failed pretty significantly because everyone sees through it, but it doesn't stop them from trying to co-opt his figure. You know, just like you have people co-opting Malcolm X and you have people co-opting Martin Luther King and you have people co-opting, you know, it happens in every space where these revolutionary figures get whitewashed. And or you know, to use a term more specific to India, saffron washed. That's sorry, I just
that is, all of those things are very, very interesting and very telling. But I think I'll just go on to the next question, which I have like two questions basically about your use of like digital media. One's about like your use of like Google Street View, and then the other is like digitizing and animating space, which you do quite a bit, like with your own face, with the mountains. I believe, are they the mountains in Kashmir?
The mountains in Kashmir.
What is the purpose behind that, or the use of the digital in terms of talking about these? These topics.
I think Simon actually touched on it just a little bit. And also, I mean, I really appreciated Miko's use of kind of filming the screen and, you know, and the kind of like referentiality that comes with that. But, you know, I think it's the, essentially, it's a few things. So this film is in a longer line of work. This is a second film in a series of work. The first film is called At Home But Not at Home, and that film used more of these desktop experiences, used more of like Skype kind of interviews with my father, talking about growing up in Goa and living through the liberation of Goa from the Portuguese who had colonized Goa for 450 years. And so, you know, and I use a lot of like Google walkthroughs and all these things, but really it's just to say that you know, this idea of the binary between the physical and the digital is a false binary. It's an artificial binary. And in fact, a lot of people, instead of using this term like, you know, IRL, like in real life, people use the term AFK, away from keyboard, because you know, life does not stop, you know, with you know, the screen or like the internet and instantaneous communication, instantaneous connectedness. You know, connectedness to, right now we're talking, you know, to people all over the world. You know, we have Chicago, LA, you know, and so, and I think the thing is that you know, that to try and break that binary down through the medium of film, and to play with that through the analog digital conundrum, you know, and like Simon also said, kind of playing with that sense that like you know, these analog technologies are like nostalgic, and that you know, they're kind of like relegated to the past. But also to like literally physicalize this material, you know, like I have these images stored, you know, under my couch. Probably not the best way to store them, but you know, it's you know, they're a physical object in the world. You know, this YouTube film, or this YouTube clip, which also, I should also say, amazing that people have reached out to me from this, you know, YouTube clip of it was a student die-in of a reading of this poem by Aya Shahid Ali. And so someone reached out to me and was like, I was at that protest, and I was just like, that's insane. Like, this is just a random YouTube clip that I found from 2017, you know, but it spoke, you know, to the politics of what I was doing, and also a very political location, the Jamia Millia Islamia University. And, you know, to have someone to reach out to me and be like, I loved your film. Also, I was at that exact moment. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, lots of the kind of digital becoming real, like lots of this, this kind of supposed virtual or imaginary space of connection. Really, this whole series was me very much trying to connect, because to ancestry, to lineage, to diaspora, to my people. And I think the thing is that I have felt very isolated for a number of reasons. Growing up in Texas, my parents got divorced when I was very young, and so not really getting to spend time in India. And so, a lot of this project now that I'm in my 30s is like, why have I thought that I have separated myself from the richness of my own culture and my own people, and to try and to dig into some of that. And of course, there's growing pains along the way. Of course, there's a lot of learning and unlearning that happens. But that to have some of these moments of intention that are infused in the film manifest through new connections, through new relationships, through new friends. It's amazing, and it's why I make film and why I make art. It's a beautiful thing, and I'm very lucky and feel very humbled to be a part of such a massive community across the world, that you find these small synchronicities, and then sometimes things just go in unexpected directions, and it's kind of magical. So thank you again for putting this program together. Yeah,
of course, it's been really great, and hearing what you have to say about your film has been really great as well. I think I'm going to transition over to Lei Lei now, and we'll talk about his film, and then after that, I think we'll have a little period where we can talk to each other and see if any of the filmmakers have something to say to the other filmmakers. So Lei Lei, thank you for joining from Beijing. I know it's a bit earlier there for you, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, great. I'm going to start just same at the beginning of your film, just starting with the photograph. That it seems to be the photograph of you and your mother in the fake car at Lushan Mountain in 1988. When did you come across this photo, and where does it fit into how this project came together, or the formation of it even?
Yeah, actually, the photo for me is very it's very interesting, because if we're talking about photographer, we think about it's like memories or something real from history or like that. But this photo is totally fake. Only me and my mother is real person in the photo, but the car, the mountain, the view, everything is fake. So for me, it's very interesting. So why you go to some place but take this kind of fake memory, have this kind of fake memory in your mind? So yeah, so I think the first thing is I like this photo, and I think it's beautiful memory for me and my mom. Second thing is why I start from this photo, because I'm right now I'm teaching in Karas. I have a class called Memory Clash. It's like I teaching student like just studying from one photo and finish like a film or installation or video artwork. So I think this working process is very interesting. It's come from Warda's film Ulysses, just from one photo she did before, and she interviewed different people and go to do some research, and also interview kids and have some archive from history. So I think this kind of working process very interesting for personally memories, and make it very open to different audience, like special in the classroom, people from different cultural backgrounds, and people have different like color and the language, but people can share the memory together only from one photo. I think it's a beautiful process. So yeah, so also for myself as a faculty member, I also use this way to create my film. So just from one photo, and then I do some research. I find some film, have a relationship with this photo, and I will go to Lushan Mountain, do some sound recording, and blah blah blah, and then I try to editing after everything.
Yeah, I think that's interesting to hear that you're kind of teaching other people to go down that route as well. And I also thought like your exploration of this photo was interesting because you were like almost relearning the story, or like relearning the memory itself, where like your mother had to tell you how you were, how you were fussy that day or things like that. I thought that was real interesting to like for you, things like that are coming back that you were there for and you experienced, but you have to relearn again. I don't know if that happened again through the process, that anything else you would like to talk about in terms of that memory, revisiting memories.
Yeah, actually, like for myself, during the process, I visiting the memories and understand the history again. As I mentioned in the film, like they have a Lushan conference in this location, and after that, then have a Cultural Revolution, very important political movement in China. But when I visited the location, I don't know about the history background. So based on this film working process, then I understand the history, not only about my history, my family history, also like a big group history. And another thing is I try to make it open enough. Like I use a lot of photo, actually the photo in the film not all come from Lushan Mountain. Some is come from like secondhand market, and some is come from commercial catalog. So it's come from everywhere to make everyone looks like Lushan Mountain is everywhere, and the people can enjoy the storytelling by themselves. And everyone could understand their own history by this film, I hope. So it's not only my personal story. I hope it could bring like, wider discussion based on the moving image and the sound design. Yeah.
No, I also did think that the use of, I'm hearing that they are like secondhand photos and things from advertisements interesting because it does have like a generic feel to it, and something that like a lot of the shots and things like that, like there's some shots of a telephone or shots of a recorder that seem like they're from a commercial or something like that. Or like, I think there was like a discussion of a photo on a desk, and the photo that's on the screen is clearly just some random person, I think, or do you know what I'm saying? Or something like that, where I think it allows you to insert your own experience into there and empathize and associate with it, which I think is really nice. But can you talk a bit more about your decision in finding these found images and things like that, where you were looking, or if you had any specific sources you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I think very, very important in this film is the footage from Romance in Lushan Mountain. That's old film which shot in 1988. Like that film, I think very important for my memories, and also have a very strong connection with Cultural Revolution, because this film is the first film about love after Cultural Revolution in China. And on the top of Lushan Mountain, they have there is like cinema, special cinema, only screening one film and looping to have there are no like opening or closing ceremony, but just looping only one
just
film.
Playing on it
20 years or 30 years. So I think this film is very important for me. So I just go through this film to find out some objects from the film, like clock, like television or desk, or like different things. Yeah. So then based on those objects, I go through the commercial catalog, or I go through like secondhand market to find out some similar picture or image could have a connect. So I think it's when I have a lot of material, it's more like freestyle or freedom for me to editing. So I just go through the full, and I also do some music I used the old record from this film and scratch it like DJ. So I have a lot of music. So I just go through the sound design and the music and try to find out similar photos together. And sometimes it's still image, sometimes it's moving image. I try to find out my rhythm to tell the story. So yeah, so basically there is very tough or very strong research behind the film, but when I editing the film, it's very free, and I'm very enjoying this kind of working process. Yeah.
Nice, yeah. And is the Romance on Lushan Mountain, is that something that you had seen many times before, or was that something that you had kind of come across when you were working on this project and you found this photo from like your early trips to Lushan Mountain, and that was something that you discovered then, or what's your relationship with the film on a personal level?
Yeah, I think this film is more like the memory for my parent generation. So they watched that several times because, you know, after Cultural Revolution, there are no kinds of like love film for young people. But like for my generation, if I visit Lushan, because it's very close to my hometown, so if I go to the Lushan, I need to watch this film because there's only one cinema on top of Lushan Mountain. So we need to watch this film several times. So yeah, so that's my relationship. I can't say it's my generation like group memories, but you know, anyway, I think my parents or grandparents' memory will influence me a lot. Yeah.
But that film did link you. It linked your childhood trips to this kind of moment in time that people experience this exciting film.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think is interesting in terms of the photos you used and the video you used as well. Because they were so generic and they're so wide reaching, is that you had a lot of, it feels like your work is really about the collective experience. I don't know if that's something you agree with, or if that's anything to speak on.
Yeah, about the research, I would like to say actually all the archive and found footage not special for this film. It's like in my studio in Beijing, I just continue to collect different kind of old stuff for maybe more than 10 years, black and white photos, old magazines, old recorders. I just prepare for different kind of materials in my studio. So when I have Romance in Lushan Mountain, this kind of film or clips, so then I can go back to my studio, go back to my library. So maybe then I can find something I like or interesting or surprise me. So then I can finish it at the filmmaking. So that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely, it does.
Yeah, by the way, I would like to say I'm very excited for this conversation because I'm very enjoying the filmmaker who talks before me, and like Simon or Sunil's film I watch on like Rotterdam Film Festival online, I think. So I'm very happy for this program. It's very interesting to hear the story from the film. Yeah, thanks very much for this event.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad. I was really glad to hear it as well. It was very nice to hear kind of the expanded history behind everyone's works here. And I guess that's a good segue point to start the conversation. If any of you, I don't know if you have any questions yourself about the other works, or any of the other directors have anything they'd like to talk about related to any of the other films, or ask any of the other filmmakers questions.
Maybe we can open for
and if not, that's okay as well. But I think also, I don't know, Leroy, if there are any questions from the chat.
Yeah, hey everyone, just tuning back in. So there haven't been any questions or comments yet from the attendees, but you know, if folks had questions for each other, I was just thinking about how it's just like miraculous, these like convenings, I feel like, particularly in this, you know, pandemic time, virtual life, you know, and it's just incredible to see folks from around the world, Mexico, New York, and Beijing, Los Angeles, Xavier, you're in Chicago. I mean, it's just so amazing to have all of us in this space, and also like just to hear all of your different kind of relationships to each other as makers and works that you've come across, or just relationships you have with each other is really amazing. So yeah, if you guys had any questions or comments to each other about your films, that would be great to talk about. Yeah. I also had just a general comment. I don't know if it's really a question, but a comment to share as well, in case folks wanted me to pose that.
I have a question that's for everyone, because I mean, you know, this is kind of maybe a little too on the nose, but given that the program's title and the kind of conceptual like interlinkings of these works, a lot of it has to do with memory, obviously, different forms of memory. But like, what got people interested in just the topic of memory? Whether it's like, you know, intergenerational memory or intergenerational kind of like interviews, which is a form of memory, film is a form of memory. I'm just curious, like, what got people into just the kind of very open topic of memory? Maybe there's no like one point that anyone can point to, but just curious.
I feel like it's a subject that's like leans itself to like what like the potential of cinema is as an art form that's unique in of itself, right? Like it's the only art form where you can like have a direct transition to something in the past that isn't like a play being like, we are 5 years earlier but in the exact same place, you know? So I think also like it being a time-based medium also has a lot to do with it, you know? I don't know, and I was talking to I went to go see my friend's show. My friend has a painting in a show right now, and I was like, wait, is everyone's work essentially about memory? You know, and it's like everyone all art to a certain degree about how one might remember something. But I think it is different when I feel like all of us are very specifically working, like consciously working with memory, you know, but like essentially everyone's working with memory to some degree, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean if you painting is a form of memory, you know, any sort of mark making, drawing, painting, scratching on film, it's all a form of memory because it's an imprint, you know. Any sort of imprint is a form of memory.
I think the imprint idea is a really important. I mean, I think a lot of my relationship to want to make work about memory is about the failure of the medium itself. Like a file getting erased or something, and like a desire to re-get the file that you've now lost, you know. And it's probably like the file wasn't even very interesting to begin with. It's the idea of the file that's more, or the memory of the file, or that moment that's probably more interesting than the moment itself in a way, you know. Yeah, I think it's, or just thinking about like if you shoot a roll of film with like in a specific place at a specific time, that roll of film is like has been there in that room and now it's with you, you know. So I think that's part of it too.
In a sense, I suppose all digital labor also relates in the computer's memory space. And then I don't know, whenever I work with just purely digital images also, and I suppose like everyone's film here, though it's analog, has been like scanned through digital, has to go through the process of these problems of like digital failure. Also, I don't know, just the processing ability of our computers or external hard drives, the capacities of them to process memory kind of connects to our own processing of memory. How fast hard drives can source this one file or something, how fast, like whatever your digital video editing software is like, I don't know, going through your cache files to like render this in a way that you can recognize. Is like, it's funny how we have this word memory as the sort of official like technological term for the files that we're using. And then it's like there's, when working in like modern digital editing, we have a constant struggle with memory. Like this is a serious like headache, a thing that we have to deal with all the time, not just in a sort of not just the existential memory, the technical memory that we're trying to like process our existential memory through. Yeah, I don't know. I find that kind of interesting and also like frustrating.
We rely, like, our hopes and dreams, we rely on these things to work. You know what I mean? Which is also like, yeah, it's wild.
So on that note, there is a question that came in from Madison, which is related to memory. He says, I'm touched by the exploration of media and memory and thinking of Vertov's comment on so-called slow motion, saying essentially, it's not slow motion, quote, there's more time in that time. Could you talk about finding time in cinema?
I like that. Finding time. Not enough of it.
Sorry.
No, please, go ahead. Go ahead.
When editing, I tend to go with like physical time, and that's more sort of like an instinctual, like, I don't know, the beat of like when it feels like the image is going to break or when you want it to go to the next one or something. And then I always kind of, I don't know, in relation to time, it's just like when to press, when to cue or something is very much connected to the body and how like the impulse of pressing stop or something. I like to edit that way, and it's a sort of physical like activity, editing, I think. And I think that, I don't know, how I manage with time and montage is just kind of like that. And it kind of relates also, even if it's like a in-camera edit, which I also love to do, like say with a Bolex, translating that sort of workflow of the trigger onto like the digital timeline. I also kind of like try to take those like impulses of like the trigger of like a Bolex onto like, I don't know, the space bar or something.
I think that's really it, because like the idea of like the camera roll in camera editing, like the nature of that sequence tracks your passage or something like that. So I think there is that relationship too between like working with like linearity of a film strip and relating that to time as well, or letting that like play through to a certain degree. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, maybe my working process could be a little bit different. I'm not like using camera to shoot the footage. I just print each frame of the old archives on paper and then scan it. Then I have a moving image frame by frame. So I think finding time in cinema, this kind of topic is very interesting to me. So for me, so maybe the time between the frame is the space, or is the time like I can play with it, or I can find the time between the frame. So when I work with my film, I just changing the speed and changing the order and like Miko, I do some montage. So I'm very enjoying that. Like we are the musician can create the time, create a new feeling of the time in the cinema. Yeah.
All right, could you repeat the Vertov quote again?
Yeah, so quote, let's see, I'll just kind of reread this. So I'm touched by the exploration of media and memory and thinking of Vertov's comment on so-called slow motion, saying essentially it's not slow motion, quote, there's more time in that time, unquote.
Yeah.
Sunil, I think you're muted if you're, yeah, there you go.
Miko, were you about to say something as a follow-up?
No, you should go ahead first. Yeah.
No, I'm still gathering my thoughts, but it's such a beautiful idea. It's almost like this excess of time, like this idea of like there being somehow more time than what we normally perceive, and yeah, I think that's super interesting because I'm thinking about like well, specifically sites of research, mostly being the internet for me. Not to say that there's not plenty of like non-online modes of research, but that this compendium of research and, you know, quote unquote knowledge is essentially the ultimate like collapsing of time because of how much recorded history exists on the web and how much you're able to go back and forth through time, and how, you know, when you go through these like kind of black holes, you know, I guess, or like when we or wormhole, that's what I'm trying to say. Like when you go down like a research wormhole and you somehow find yourself having spent 8 hours, you know, reading something. And yeah, I don't know. I just think it's interesting, this like relationship specifically to history too, and the collapsing of history on film, not just through the images that are being shown, but of the time periods that we're playing with. You know, that kind of like past present dialectic is super interesting in terms of like, where do you find time? And I mean, in my film particularly, I mean, visiting certain sites of like, you know, like I would visit the ruins of like the Mughal Empire, you know, from the 14th century. And, you know, just that kind of, the act of being on these ruins is a form of finding time, you know, finding a way of inhabiting time, or feeling the weight of time pass through you in different ways. Yeah.
Also, if I may chime in relation to Vertov's comment on slow motion, I was thinking about how like editing can also really suck because how time consuming it can be. And then it's literally like we're working in a time-based medium in a sense that like everything that we cut, we have to watch over and over again. And then I think about Vertov's Man with a Movie Camera, and there's this like sequence where you see all of the film strips, like it's like, yo, you have to watch all of that. Like the process of editing is so time consuming because you have to like find the cutting point and then watch it over again. So you're like watching sequences over and over again to really kind of like dial in the timing. Everything is time. And then by editing, you're just like, it's kind of this purgatory that you get from between filming and like the final film, where you're just stuck in this repetition of watching the same shots over and over again. So it is kind of interesting to I don't know what like Vertov is talking about in this slow motion, but maybe like I'm thinking about his like, I don't know, crazy like wall of rolls of like shots, and then I'm like, wow, that must have taken a long time.
Well, one thing I was going to just mention, kind of going back to memory, is that something I was really struck by with the works is that, you know, I can see how all of your films, right, can be sort of categorized as like a personal film, right? And I think that with like the sort of use of personal archives or personal narrative, and what's interesting to me is that like you're also using found footage, borrowed and loaned archives, right? And at some point, these elements, right, or these sources become indistinguishable. And I think there's something to be said about how I think all of the films actually are really, to me, like talking about the instability of memory or the impossibility of representing memory or lived experience, or also then the fabrication, right, of memory. And that's just something that really struck me with all of the four works. But I don't know if anyone had anything to say about that, but just wanted to put that out there.
If I can kick it off, for me, I think I put these images to film, to make into a film, in a sense, like I know that I'm gonna care for them, like the ones that'll make a film. When it's a film, it's the ones that I'll definitely hold on to. I'll have to take responsibility of, and circulate and so on. So then the sort of commitment that it goes onto the film, like I'll look at these images for a long time, hopefully, and I'll have to really sort of archive and just take care of its well-being, make sure it's in a safe place, and then so it aids my memory, at least, that like I'll know that these images will be safe. Other images, maybe a hard drive crashes, they're gone forever. But I don't know. At least like these ones, I'll make a better effort to hold on to.
Yeah, I like the idea of the fabrication of memory that you were talking about, or just kind of like maybe recreating or these types of things. I think Lei Lei talked about that a little bit, but I think that in my film I was talking about mythology, like memory being a form of mythology, or the kind of like family histories are all sort of like a form of myth making. And in the beginning of Letter from Your Far Off Country, you see like me navigating the Google Street View of essentially these Kashmiri mountains, and my father talking about our kind of birth generations and generations ago, from migrating from Kashmiri mountains to Goa. And so that there's a lot of myth making involved in all of that, because so much of it is not recorded. It's just passed down from oral traditions and oral history, and it's not guaranteed. Not that I'm going to have children, but like I would hate to think of like if I did have children and if I hadn't done this project, how much would have been lost, because how much would I have passed down just from asking my father. My father was like, I spoke to my father only like 5 minutes my entire life. So, what you're doing is important. And so I think of that kind of how intergenerational memory gets mythologized and gets recreated every generation. And I think that they become legend, and I guess that's how myths are just formed. But I'm interested in that, and the malleability of all of that, just like the malleability of memory, how and the malleability of time. And maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. That all memory is manipulation, all oral history is manipulation, and maybe there's no right or wrong way to tell these stories, and we should encourage more manipulation, potentially, you know.
I think you talking about manipulation is very interesting, because that's what feels like this whole process of putting these memories or this search for like a collective understanding into a visual medium or into a medium itself, like you were saying before about the imprint just in general, is manipulation. And that search, though, is something that's worth watching unfold. And it seems like all of the works do that, and try to unfold some sort of search for memory or a search for understanding. Yeah.
So I think on that note, unless folks had any other questions for themselves, I think we can start to wrap up. Any last words?
Well, I'd like to just say thanks for all of you coming on. I know it was we had to figure out a time and work things out, but I really appreciated this conversation, and I really enjoyed it as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to be in a program with you guys. You're all awesome, and yeah, thank you very much for having us. It was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you again. I hope we get to see each other in person sometime soon. You know.
Yeah, I think it's very good to, especially on the coronavirus, it's very hard to do the international flight to meet people personally. So I think it's very good to discuss about memory, in this kind of situation. So I think if we share the memory, it looks like we will understand each other better, because we do a lot of quarantine and isolate in these 2 years. So thanks very much for this program, and I will go back to online to watch Summon and you guys film again after this conversation. Yeah.
Great. I wanted to just end on actually, Sunil, the last line of your film, how we connect and comprehend is up to us. I think it's just such a great way to think about, right, all of these works that we've seen, and these different ways that we're thinking about memory and time and diaspora. A really beautiful way to end. But yeah, thank you so much, Simon, Miko, Lei Lei, Sunil, and Xavier. Thank you so much for your time and for tuning in. And yeah, like we mentioned, the recording of this will be on YouTube. So we'll be sure to follow up with you guys and let you know when that's up. But thank you so much again. Right. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
See you all. All right. See you all later.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.